Guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a great day. So, of course, by now I would expect many of you all have heard about the United Healthcare CEO shooting. It took place a few days ago in a very cold and chilling execution style caught on video event. Uh, this gunman basically executed this CEO of United Healthcare, one of the leading insurance companies, health insurance companies in the United States. Um, so what's been happening is the public sentiment on this case has been uh, quite disturbing for some reasons. Yet uh, it seems to be a long time coming outcry from people with their distaste for how insurance companies treat the public, how it handles claims, right? Um, Years ago, there was a movie called John Q that uh, starring Denzel Washington. It showed just how extreme these situations can get, how sad, how the well-being of citizens don't get addressed. And although that was just a movie, uh, there are countless situations where people have personal stories about how insurance claims impact them, right? And not being able to get the care for their loved ones and so on, right? And so the public has been boiling over for quite a long time, way before this incident, about the problems with healthcare within the United States. They've been boiling over with the high price costs of prescription drugs, right? And whereas most developed nations, most advanced civilizations across the globe have free healthcare systems, right, where citizens and their well-being come first, the United States still uses this capitalistic system where we pay insurance premiums, and insurance is not a right. It's more of it's trying to get better now, but it was pretty much totally you just die if you don't got insurance. You're not going to get the care you need, right? And this is what happens in the argument that capitalism is the best system in the world, and that is there are some things that have to do with public well-being and public health that capitalism can be anti towards. Um, Within the Constitution of the United States, there is a clause that talks about the well-being of citizens. Some people have expanded that out to mean that it should include health care, right? There have been constitutional attorneys who've looked into that and said that could be covered as part of well-being of citizens, that the government is in fact responsible for citizens to a great degree. Then you get things like universal health care and so on. But then, of course, the other side of the argument is that this wasn't referring to anything like this, especially hundreds of years ago, right? Whatever side of the camp you fall under, there are people out here who believe that there are certain well-being principles, well-being ideas that should be included at the government level to protect and take care of its citizens. Um, Universal health care, universal basic income. Here's an interesting question, I guess, too, to consider. A lot of people who watch the channel by now understand that I've been a advocate for universal basic income for many years now, and I've been trying to speak about the seriousness of universal basic income, that it should be up there as high as climate change, that it should be up there as high as nuclear proliferation, crime, and so on, right? That it should be one of the most important issues of the 21st century, especially with technology and so on. And it's kind of like one of those things where until something very extreme happens, very much real time happens, is that the only time is when people's minds can shift and pay attention to these issues. And it's no different from the United Healthcare situation. People have kind of just been going along and pulled along with how capitalism works, how insurance companies work within the United States, how the high cost of prescription drugs, and they just been kind of getting pulled and tugged along with the winds on however the system wanted to treat them. And so we get an incident that is so chilling and that is so deliberate and specific to the problem that now everybody stops in their tracks, and you get whereas before people didn't think they could do anything, you get somebody who thought they could do something, and maybe they did do something that could change how these incidents and these situations get dealt with. Right? This is a huge political message. Is it the right message? Probably not, but it may be an effective message. It is a very sad situation to take somebody's life. You know, punishment should always fit the crime and something. But it would seem that there are people who believe that this crime might have been appropriate. Now, of course, I don't believe that. You know, I think this is a machine so complex, killing one person, even a person this important, is not going to stop the machine, right? But it does get the conversation going, and it could create situations where things like this become more commonplace. And that could become a situation where people feel they need to do something uh, in the system itself, reform and overhauls and such. Um, Now, I mentioned universal basic income because, you know, one thing I've heard a lot is I've heard this throughout life that the best medicine is food, right? And over the decades, there have been quite the conversation about the dangers that our food products are putting on citizens of the United States, that they're full of microplastics, that they're causing cancer, uh, you know, that there are countless conspiracy theories with the FDA. And there are just all these information, whether it be misinformation, disinformation. There is a problem health wise with our food. Um, Certain foods that we have within the United States aren't even, or things that are being allowed to be put in our food is illegal in other countries across the world, right? And so my question is going towards, if the big complaint and if the public sentiment it was so chilling and so uh, lack of empathy for the murdering of this CEO because of what people believe has been placed on them with a broken healthcare system that may be corrupt, that is maybe run by greedy people in capitalism in its worst form. But if that is the attitude toward what's happening in our healthcare system, uh, as far as us being healthy and being allowed to be healthy and treated with dignity and respect and well and so on, then how far does healthcare expand? Because if it's so much about healthcare and the well-being of us and our bodies and physically and mentally and so on, and our food is so much an important part of that, then if the food's not fixed, how is healthcare going to get fixed, right? And so when you ask questions like, would the food be fixed along with healthcare, because it is so instrumental in healthcare, right? Then how's that going to be done? Because with rising costs of food and so on, are people going to be able to afford to eat? I hear so many families talking about they can barely afford groceries. Is that not impacting healthcare? And what's going to be uh, philosophy behind the idea and expansion behind the definition of healthcare, right? Because if those things are included in this type of preventative care, more regulation on what's allowed in our food and our water and so on. If we should ban many chemicals in our food, much like Europe and other nations do, to the point that when you go to these other countries and you eat and you try to come back here and eat the food that makes you sick, should not be as well expanded into healthcare, right? And how is it going to be expanded into healthcare if people complain about they can't even afford healthy food, right? You see, the universal health care and the universal basic income seemingly go hand to hand, right? And if there are CEO killers, political killers, idealistic killers, disgruntled killers based on how the system treats them in the healthcare system, willing to target any face of these industries, of these areas of these institutions that they can find, right? Is that going to expand to other areas, right? Is the philosophies going to expand to the point that people are just shooting anybody affiliated with any of these institutions dead on the street to drive home the message? Because that would be no different than what just happened with this United Healthcare shooting. Is that what it's going to take, sadly, to change things, to make people take universal healthcare seriously, to take these things serious, to take this subject serious, right? And how would that get fixed exactly? If the problem is healthcare costs too much, claims are being denied, people are sick. People are sick because they can't eat the proper foods. People are sick because they can't afford the proper medicine and so on, right? What are going to be some of the methods to fix these situations in this industry, right? So, as many of you all watch the channel know how much I talk about universal basic income. There are countless videos I do about um, the advantages and the pros of universal basic income, right? Mental health, right? People, research has shown people who were given universal basic income exhibited less issues of mental health decline that people who were given basic income, $1,000 plus per month, were able to eat healthier foods. They were able to, go to the gym and so on, right? And so, isn't it the case that all of these things contribute to healthcare, right? That healthcare is a far encompassing idea and well-being of citizens, right? And if people don't get these things, right, if they don't get the basic rights to needs of sustenance so that they're healthy, they don't get the basic access to health care. So, one of the richest countries in the world where people don't have to walk around sick. I was just showing someone some data on how it would only cost about $177 billion to end all poverty in the United States, right? To feed everybody in the United States to where they wouldn't be. Because make no mistake about it, guys, if you're not eating properly, right? If you're missing meals here and there, if you're not getting certain vitamins and supplements, right? Isn't that going to lead to decline in healthcare? Isn't that going to lead to disease and so on, right? So I believe universal basic income and universal health care, they're almost the same exact thing to a certain degree. Even if we were to go into universal health care, right, that would be a system where the costs are way for you to get health care, right? That's the same thing like universal basic income. Whether you're receiving a dividend and funds that could be used to waive the cost of certain healthcare premiums and healthcare procedures and get you healthy food and get you healthy programs on diet and exercise. It all plays a huge part into healthcare. But my greatest fear with the denial of these things and not taking these things serious and saying this is capitalism and we shouldn't have any of these socialist-like systems is when people began to cry out and fight for what they believe to be fighting against corruption, greed, and all these things that easily find a home in capitalism, right? Where CEOs are murdered in the daytime on the streets. It is like that eat the rich scenario, right? That happens at some point in some dystopian future that we're on the road to, right? And so it might be time it's always been time to take these things very seriously and ask the proper questions, right? And stop wasting our time and getting off focus with things that aren't important. We've buried our head in the sand with ideas like universal basic income because we've said things like the robots aren't here yet, that ChatGPT is not going to develop any further. We've made all these cases, whether we have done them consciously or subconsciously, we have already made the decisions on what we deem to be important. And the way our healthcare system has run for so many years, we had already made the choice that we were accepting it, right? And that we could do nothing about it. Well, the problem is now that people are cheering for this suspected killer, right? What is proven killer, that it is a very ugly thing, right? And that's usually how it works. When you bury your head in the sand over certain incidents that are going to be necessary for people to have a certain quality of life and survive, when people do react at the most critical of moments, it can be very messy and ugly. And that's why I've been advocating for ideas like universal basic income for years. And this has been the response, right? So that it doesn't get messy like this, so that we don't implement it at the most desperate of times, right? When there's nothing else to do and the world's falling apart, when people are killing people in the streets. That's why we push this before disaster hits. My great fear is that this is going to become commonplace, right? This is going to become commonplace. And unfortunately, this incident didn't make things any better. It made things 10 times worse, because the way that this killer navigated this entire thing, how he got out of New York, how he became this like Robin Hood, freedom fighter type character, has only created a much more romanticized view of how to deal with greed and capitalism, with corrupt systems, with broken systems that are pushed and held up by our governments. And this incident is going to create many more people like this who don't know how to deal with this issue, that don't have a solution, but are just going to act. And that's going to be bad for everyone, because a lot of people are going to get hurt. And it's unfortunate that it has to get to this place for us to do something about this, right? Because when you look at these comment sections across the internet, that's what this is. That is frustration. That is hopelessness from people who have tried to go through these systems to get the help and care they need and haven't received it. And now the lid's blown off, right? Within universal basic income, when these robots start doing all these jobs that get automated away, and we can't put people to work, and people cannot keep up with these machines, it's not a question of if, but when. And when we can clearly see this on the precipice, it won't be uncommon for there to be violence, all right? And that's not something I hope will happen. I certainly hope that it doesn't get ugly and that we remain peaceful. But the reason I can conceive it will happen is because the response to universal basic income and universal health care, it just hasn't been strong enough, right? People just haven't taken it serious enough, because people share a much so short-sighted view, and they react at the worst of times, right? And it seems like that's going to have to be the way we go, unfortunately, right? And so that's why I could see many more situations like this in the future. So that's pretty much what I got to say on this issue. I just want to remind you guys that punishment should fit crimes, that this person who was killed, he is a cog in a huge wheel, right? This guy is one person, one CEO of a sophisticated big machine that won't stop at the death of one CEO or 1,000 CEOs, right? But maybe the point was to get everybody excited so they could try to make the changes at the sacrifice of this person. And that would be very unlucky and unfortunate for him if that's the case. But yet here we stand with all our attention on this situation. Anyway, guys, tell me all what you think about this. Do you feel that healthcare and quality food is the same thing? And what do you do when you can't afford the food, right? Uh, there has to be access for you to get the healthy food, because if you can't get the healthy food, if you can't get resources to get the healthy food, then what use is medicines going to be? What use is therapy going to be? What use is seeing your doctor going to be, right? Then that makes sense. So that's all I want to say in this video. Until next time, as always, take care of yourselves, guys, and each other.